drinking STP. Maybe we can.
Well, they say we're live, so here we go. Hello, all you STP Left Lane Club members. We appreciate you joining us here. I'm Aric Almirola, driver of the 43 car for Mr. the King, Richard Petty. So we're here to hang out with you guys for the next hour and answer any questions you guys have. So we appreciate your time, and we're looking forward to answering some of your questions.
Sounds good to me. Okay.
Let's do it.
All right. Get started.
Tell us about the single defining or your most favorite moment of your career.
I mean, it lasted 30-some years. It's kind of hard to,
Yeah.
you know, first race you won was great, but the last one was better. And I guess if you really got down to it, you'd have to go to the July the 4th, 1984. Won the race on the last green flag lap in front of the President of the United States for your 200th win. So that had to be the crown of glory, I guess.
I think that's the special one that sticks out to most of the crowd too. So, your relationship with STP, it's obviously extremely iconic with the car and the 43 car, and it's a huge part of racing history. What do you think makes the STP relationship with Richard Petty so special?
You know, when we first went with STP, they'd been in Indy, and Andy Granatelli was running the show, and he wanted to get into stock car racing, and we somehow or another got together. And so when we did, then, you know, we had to go through all the process because he'd never been in stock car racing. So it was a little bit different than Indy. And the big deal, I think, that there was just probably more stock car fans than there were Indy fans. Mm-hmm. And I think we've done more of a cross-section of the people that even went to the Indy cars, because they couldn't associate with a Ford or a Chevrolet or a Plymouth, and stock car people could.
Right.
And that's what STP wanted to do, and so it just hit a good chord with the racing people and all your buyers from the STP standpoint. I
know for me that paint scheme's so iconic and so special. Even if you didn't have STP logos on it, you still knew it was the STP car. You just as soon as you saw it, you knew it was the STP car.
Yeah, that was one of the deals that we'd always had a blue car, Petty Blue, and his car was always Dayglow orange, and that was our our big discussion. What color was the car going to be? And I told him it's going to be blue, and he said it's going to be red. And I got up to leave. That's how hard-headed I was. And he said, "No, let's sit down and think about it." So we stayed overnight and started talking to some of the PR people. So we decided on half and half red or orange and half blue. And when I got my contract, Andy had written in the contract for an extra $50,000 if you'll paint the car orange. And I just marked through the thing and sent it back. So it's been that color, you know, for about 30-some years, I guess.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Question from 43 fan forever, Mr. Petty. What was your favorite car you drove and your least favorite car you drove throughout your career?
Both of them had to be a Dodge, okay? Probably the 72, 3, 4 body style that Dodge had at the time, because we ran it like 5 or 6 years. And that was probably the best overall car we ever had. We worked on short tracks or super speedways or road courses. The car was just a good aerodynamic car before we got into a lot of aerodynamics with the spoilers and all that stuff. And the worst car we ever had was a 78 Dodge, Magnum or whatever they call it. We just never could get that thing to go anywhere, and about halfway through the season we just parked in the back of the garage and got something else.
Let it collect some dust. All right, next question here. We got a question from Scott, 43 fan. Where do you see NASCAR going in 20 years?
Man, that's a long way out there. You know, if you'd had asked me 20 years ago where would it be now, it wouldn't be where I thought it would have been.
Right.
And so things change so quick today in the automobile industry or just in life, that it's hard to speculate. I mean, in 20 years, who knows if we're going to have engines in cars, or are they going to be batteries, or
Right.
are they going to have wings on them?
That's right.
So we'll have to wait and see where we are on that. So other than that, I can't answer that question.
That was going to be my question for you was, you know, in the last 20 years, you've seen the sport evolve so much. It's hard to really understand where it's going to go in the next 20 years because it's changed so much so quick in the first 20.
Well, see, it really started just strictly stock. And then they kept modifying and modifying and modifying. And ran pretty stock cars up until, 81, I guess. And then NASCAR decided that they wanted, because the cars were getting smaller and they was getting a lot of six-cylinder engines and front-wheel drives. So NASCAR said, we're going to build a chassis and put a V8 motor up front, and then you put the body on it from there. And that just escalated over a period of time. They finally got all the bodies looking the same. At least this year, they went back and the cars still look like a Ford or a Chevrolet or whatever. And so they went completely away. Now they're coming back. And so you just have to sort of look at how things have changed. And you know, now we've got fuel injection instead of carburetors.
Right.
So, you know, I don't even think NASCAR don't even know what the next move is. They did do a super good thing as far as taking and making the car safe.
Right.
It's so much safer now than it was 10 years ago or 5 years ago as far as that's concerned. And the safety walls. So NASCAR has done a really good job of protecting their self and the drivers.
Right. Question from Petty 43 NASCAR. King, how did you feel after your 1970 wreck at Darlington? I think I could answer this question.
Not good.
Yeah, that was going to be my guess.
Yeah, it dislocated the shoulder, and I missed 2 or 3 races, and it was really a downfall. We went down there and had the Superbird and was just flat flying, and I crashed in practicing. So we didn't have a one Superbird. Pete Hamilton had one, I had the other. And so we come back and got a short track car, and the car was like a second slower than what the Bird was.
Oh, wow.
And me as a driver was trying to make up the difference and run head on in the wall. So it wasn't a good day for sure.
Did you have to come back home to get your backup car?
Yeah, we had to come back home.
Yeah.
At that time, they didn't let you take 2 cars to the racetrack.
Is that right?
Nobody thought about it.
Right.
In fact, we didn't have the 2 cars, a short track car and a Superbird.
Right.
And you didn't think about taking a backup car.
How things have changed. All right, our next question is from Duck Yuri. Are there still plans to move the museum to the old shop?
Yes, there is very, very much in the workings right now. We would like to be able to start establishing the deal back at the shop. We took the old shop and made Petty's garage. And we do a lot of customizing, modifying cars, and doing whatever anybody wants to do. And but the museum's been down in Randleman, and we said, okay, being we don't have the race team there, let's move the museum back. And hopefully we can do that this winter. We'll probably have to close down for a couple of months during the first of the year or something like that, and move all this collectible, all this stuff,
Yeah.
I call it junk, all this stuff back to level cross at the shop, and then when the people come, see that shop, there was 268 cup wins out of that one shop, and it's kind of a historical deal, sort of like a bunch of stuff we got in the museum. So you'll be able to come and see
the history of
the shop, but you see the history of where my dad started with the race cars, and go through the deal all the way up through Adam and Kyle, and then you'll also be able to go over and see what Petty Garage is doing now in the old shop. So sort of a one-stop shop deal if it works out right.
That'd be really neat. And for all you people out there that haven't been to the Petty Museum already, if you do get a chance to come down here when you're down here in October for the race or whatever, I suggest you make a stop to Randleman to come check this place out. It's not just about Richard Petty Motorsports or Petty Enterprise, like me and RP were talking about earlier. It's just a bunch of stuff that he's collected. They have everything from.
I didn't collect nothing. I accumulated.
You accumulated.
Yeah, accumulated.
So they have all kind of neat stuff. Richard's got quite a few guns back there and pocket knives and all kinds of stuff. More stuff than just racing. So anybody in the area, I suggest come stop in.
It's a real petty museum. We just happen to be in racing, so we got some race cars and some trophies around.
That's right.
But the rest of it is just stuff that we accumulated over a period of years that any family does. We just happen to keep most of the stuff we got.
It's a really neat place. Question from K Bibbs. Do you believe the number 3 should be retired or brought back into competition?
You know, I thought about retiring a 43 number. But then when we got to looking at the whole situation, it is history. And for it to continue to be history, I think it needs to be in front of the people. So I think retiring, plus, you know, NASCAR's just got a little over 100 numbers.
Right.
Okay? And at any one given time, even though they don't have 45 cars at the racetrack, at any given time, all the numbers are out.
Right.
So this will eliminate some numbers. And then when you do retire a number, what constitutes the next number being retired or the next one?
Yeah.
And so I would think, from my standpoint, in fact, when I retired in 93, we took the number 44 and didn't run the 43 that year, and I missed it. Okay, and I think the fans we missed the association, so we put back on the 43, and you drive the car now, and it brings all the history back. And I think that the 3 is the same way, or any number as far as that's concerned. I think to go back in history and to remember what that number stood for and who drove it all those years, then I think it needs to be out there.
Yeah. I know for me personally, like when I'm out at the racetrack doing autograph sessions or out in the fan area or whatever, you know, I get so many people that come up to me and just tell me, hey man, you drive the 43 car, you're our driver. It doesn't matter. They don't care if my name's Aric Almirola or Dick Tracy. They just, you're the driver of the 43 car, and they support that number and that car because of all the history.
That's what they've been around since NASCAR started, so they'd lose something if it went away.
That's right. We've got another question here from STP Fan 1. What was it like when you won your first race?
Man, that was a long time ago.
When was it?
I won the first race I won was Columbia, South Carolina, exactly a year after I started driving. But it was a convertible race. And you got to figure back then there wasn't a whole lot of coverage. It was more like your Saturday night deal now. You stop on the start-finish line, you take your picture with the trophy and the flag, and everybody goes home.
That's right.
Okay? And the first cup race I won was at Charlotte at the fairground in February of 1960. So if you look at the 200 wins, that was the first of the 200. And again, there was not that many, probably 4,000 or 5,000 people in the grandstand.
Yeah.
You know, a few people come down and want autographs and stuff like that, but there wasn't a press, there wasn't TV. So you just done your thing, you got the trophy, and you went home and got ready for next week.
Did you do a burnout and climb the fence or anything like that?
I don't think so. I think it washed all the dirt off your face so that you could see what was going on.
Question from 32 Racing Junkie. Do you ever feel like going back to the grassroots racing and running a dirt team?
Not really, because really I never really run a dirt team per se. When we first started racing, I had 2/3 of the races were probably on dirt.
Right.
And then as NASCAR really got more popular, then they started taking an asphalt in those small half-mile tracks. And so I don't think I run that many 30 or 40 dirt tracks or something. I don't even remember. Anyhow, and because they were on their way out. And, you know, again, I started with stock cars, and we have went back and run some nationwide cars, stuff like, and some trucks from time to time. But as far as going out of NASCAR into another league and doing nothing but dirt tracks,
right.
It's just not in my foreseeable future, I'll put it that way.
Speaking of dirt racing, one of my favorite stories that I've gotten to hear a lot of your stories, and one of my favorite stories is you were racing at a dirt track somewhere. You'll have to refresh my memory. Dale tells this story quite a bit, but you running, leading, going away, and you run into the fence.
That wasn't a dirt track. That was an asphalt track.
Oh, okay. I could have swore that was a dirt track.
It was Asheville Weaverville Speedway, and it's one of them Sunday afternoons, and you probably had a 2 or 3 lap lead, and when no challenge, all you're trying to do is finish the race. I think I made a mistake. About halfway up the backstretch, I ran up on the wall. That woke me up. I was awake the rest of the race.
So the story goes, it wasn't a dirt track. I thought it was, but he had like a 2 lap lead on the field, and Dale Inman tells this story great. He's out there. He's watching his car go around the racetrack. Next thing you know, he doesn't need to pressure anybody or do anything silly, and he runs into the fence. And Dale's like, "What in the heck is he doing?" He asked him in the truck. So they end up winning the race. They get in the truck to go home, and Dale says, "Richard, what happened? What were you doing? Why'd you hit the fence?" Richard says, "Well, to be honest with you, Dale, I dozed off for a minute." So I don't know if that's because Dale had his car driving so good.
Oh, yeah, that's what he said. But on the dirt track deal, the last 2 races we ran, NASCAR ran in 1970. One at Columbia, South Carolina, and the very last race at Raleigh at the fairground. And I happened to win the last 2 cup races that we run on dirt. So that's my claim to dirt track.
There you go. All right, got another question here. Petty 43 NASCAR. What was your greatest competitor on the track, and why?
Probably year in and year out, race in and race out, season in and out, was probably Pearson. Because Pearson could win on dirt, he could win on short asphalt, he could win on dirt track, he could win on road courses, super speedways. He didn't really have a downside on.
Yeah.
He was just a racer, race everywhere. A lot of the other guys would be really good on short tracks, or really good on road courses, or really good on super speedways, but they didn't really shine that much on other kinds of tracks. Pearson, he shined on all kinds of tracks.
Yeah.
And you know, after all he won 105 races, you have to be pretty good to be able to do that.
All right. Question from 43 Fan Forever. Would it make it easier for NASCAR to build all the cars like the IROC series versus what we have now?
I've suggested that, okay. Yeah. For them to keep the cars more even, as far as inspections and all that stuff, it would be the way to do it.
Right.
But if you're talking about trying week in and week out, having 43 cars to try to get ready for the next race, they'd have to have 1,000 cars, and have to have 10,000 people working on them. So there's no feasible way to do it. IROC did it because they was just they had 6 or 8 cars, and then they just do it every month.
Right. So
they had plenty of time to redo the cars and stuff.
Yeah, they would only run what, eight IROC races or so?
6 or 8.
Yeah.
That's all they'd run all year. So, and a lot of times there they'd come to, we'd go to 2 or 3 different tracks, but to go to the track and run 2 or 3 races at that track, go to another track and run 2 or 3 races.
Right.
So the cars, everything was there. So that was an easier way to do it.
Right.
NASCAR has tried to, in their rules, to get as close to the IROC series, the way they did things and inspected things, and keep the cars the same. They've done everything they can right now to try to eliminate that, as far as making it look the same, be the same, and everybody really work out of the same wagon.
Right. All right, got another question here. We think. Hold on. Minor technical difficulties. We'll be with you shortly. But
they lost contact, right?
So we're here at Richard Petty Museum. What's your favorite thing of, what's your favorite part of this place? When you come here and you come back to this place and you look around.
Well, when you come in, the first thing you see is a Superbird. It's sitting up at an angle and stuff. So, and that's the main draw. But you know, of all the stuff that you've got. And I walked through there once in a while and said, you mean I handled every piece of stuff that's in here, touched it somewhere down the line? I said, well, I don't have time to do anything else.
Yeah.
But when I walk around and do all the stuff, and all the stuff that the crew, everybody had accomplished at Petty Enterprises all the years and stuff, the best thing, I guess, in the whole deal is President's Medal of Freedom.
Yeah.
Which had nothing to do with racing, except it was around racing.
Right.
But it's just something that's the highest award that an individual gets, like a
Purple
Medal of Honor.
Medal of Honor.
Medal of Honor if he was in deal.
Right.
This is Medal of Honor, I guess, just being a civilian.
Yeah.
And to go back and look at it and see how many people you've touched, hopefully most of them for the better, and just makes you feel very, very honored, because there's not that many thousand people that has that medal. And you know, from that standpoint, you say, man, this is really great. I mean, you're sitting here in the museum. This building right next to me is where the school that I went to school 10 years over there. They had the grammar school and the high school all together.
Right.
And like there was 250 people from the first grade to the 12th grade. Didn't have kindergarten and all that stuff. So this is home.
Yeah.
You mean? And then to think that I went to school there, I grew up with all these people here, played ball with them, went to church with them, you know, done everything, and still be able to be picked out of all the people around to get that medal. It's really humbling from that standpoint.
That's really cool. How about all the dolls you have back there?
Well, you see, all the dolls is all in one place, and all the guns is in another place.
I see that, and they're as far apart as they can get.
And I tell everybody that I collected the dolls and my wife collected the guns. But she's been collecting dolls even when she was real small. Got pictures of her with 2 or 3 dolls, and she was just, I guess she liked kids, because she started having them when she was 18 years old. And we had 4 of them.
Yeah.
So, you know, and over a period of time, she's collected some people's give her some. I always, for Christmas, I'd get up something special, or, you know, just if I see something somewhere on our travel.
Yeah.
I went to Vietnam, and I picked up 3 dolls over there that were made over there, and we were flying on a trooper plane with all the Army, the Navy, all the service people, and I didn't box them. I carried these dudes for like 24 hours on 3 different planes. I mean, we stopped in Japan, we stopped in Hawaii, had to come to San Francisco, and then flew home from San Francisco on Christmas Eve on the 24th. I carried them dolls all the way, plus a couple of suitcases. Yeah. So they're real special to me and her, just because of what we went through. Right. But again, she's collected, you know, you name it, she's probably got one of them somewhere, because it's over 500 dolls that she's got back there.
Wow. Questions? We still waiting on questions. All right, still working through some minor difficulties, but keep sending your questions in. We'll get to them, we promise. So you talked about traveling. You've been to Vietnam, and you've stopped in Japan and all those places. Out of all the places you've traveled to, you've obviously traveled to a lot of places for racing. Then you've traveled to a lot of places to make appearances and stuff like that. Where's your favorite place to be when besides home?
Well, besides
I know you don't get to be home very much.
Yeah, we got a home in Wyoming.
Okay.
And that's really my second favorite place.
Yeah.
But like you say, we've been a bunch of countries, every state in the union. I really like Alaska. You know, I just thought that was really great, because there's nothing up there, nobody bothers you.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
So you can sort of do your thing. That was really the deal. But you know, went to Australia, and I thought that was neat. Just a big old island sitting down there by itself.
Yeah.
You know, but I guess I'm going to say, like I've said before, I've never been anywhere. I mean, whether it was in Scotland or, you know, France or, you know, wherever. I've never been anywhere that I didn't like something there. Mm-hmm. But I've never been anywhere where I liked as much stuff as what I do at home.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're just so fortunate that somebody from a little town in Randleman, North Carolina, we live 5 miles out in the country, 2,500 people in town. And we, like I say, we lived in the country. And to be able, racing's give us that opportunity to go all over the world, take our kids all over the world, take some grandkids with us, just because of something that we wanted to do to make a living, and was fortunate enough to make a living out of it. But to me, it was a hobby.
Yeah.
Driving the race car was just a hobby part. Worked 6 days a week on the race car, doing appearances, whatever needed to be done, so I could get the race car on Sunday and just forget
Have
the rest,
fun.
forget the whole world.
That's right.
So it was more of a hobby than it was. It was never a job. Working on the car and doing all the appearances was a job. But as far as being able to go out and instead of playing golf or hunting or fishing,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, you done all that stuff. It was okay, but it wasn't a burning desire. Driving a race car was a burning desire for
Right.
a hobby. So it was kind of tough to give that part of it up.
Yeah. I'd say too, you know, obviously there's a lot of things you've accomplished. You're the king, so there's a lot of things about you that are extremely unique. But I'd say one that's got to be really unique. It sticks in my mind just talking about you right there. Is that Randleman's still home for you? I mean, you know, you grew up here. You're born and raised here, and at 76 years old, this is still home. I don't think many race car drivers can say that.
No,
you end up leaving to go chase your dream.
Well, you know, we did that show for Speed the other day.
A Racer's Life.
Racer's Life. Okay, and I explained in that deal that people are born in one place. We were born here, raised here, went to school here, went to church here, went to played ball, whatever was going on. And a lot of people, they grow up in that. Okay, and a lot of race car drivers, they'll grow up in Oklahoma or California or something, but they move.
Mm-hmm.
And when you move to a new territory, and being a celebrity per se,
Mm-hmm.
being a race car driver, then everybody in the neighborhood kind of puts you on a pedestal,
Mm-hmm.
whether you're good, bad, or indifferent.
That's
You
right.
do something different than they do,
That's right.
so they look at you a little different. So if you're not careful, you change your idea of how
Who you
things
are.
are supposed to be, or who you really are.
That's right.
And a lot of times you do it to try to show off or to be who,
Yeah.
to meet the people's, they see you one way and you try to be that way.
That's right.
And you're really not that way.
Yeah.
But you try to change to be what you feel the fan wants to be. But by just going away and doing my thing at the racetrack, then when I come home, I mean, I can walk down the street and people just throw up their hand, how you doing, you know, how's
That's
the
right.
family, you know, when's the next ball game, or,
Yeah.
you know, and the racing part is very, very, it probably gets mentioned 1 out of 1,000 times.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody even, you know, most of the time they keep up with where you at, what you're doing.
Right.
So they don't really go to that deal. Where if I move to some town or somewhere or something, every time anybody sees you, they want to talk
About
racing.
racing. That's
You know what I
right.
mean? And you want to get away
Yeah.
from that.
That's right.
So it changes your whole philosophy of life.
Yeah. That's really neat. We're still waiting. All right. So I don't know.
You're gonna have to start punching in yourself there, bud.
Yeah.
You got any questions?
No, they got questions. They're having trouble. I think they're having a little bit of internet trouble getting the chat questions
Well, you got
over
to
to
figure
us.
we're in Randleman, North Carolina. This
Yeah,
is not-
there can't
this
be
is
a whole
not-
lot of internet
this
around
is,
here.
This is not the center of electronics.
Yeah. So there's a perfect topic of conversation right there. The you know, most people today keep up with how things are going and what's going on by the internet and the computer and all that stuff. You don't mess with much of that stuff, do you?
I don't even carry a telephone. Okay.
You have your BlueBerry.
I got my BlueBerry. That's a piece of paper with where I'm supposed to be and what I'm supposed to do that day and telephone numbers.
That's right.
And that's about it. But the deal of coming in with electronics and all that kind of stuff, and I think that was one of the things that got us kind of behind at Petty Enterprises back in the early 90s and stuff. Everybody was going computer, you know, getting engineers and stuff like that. Well, we were pretty successful doing it the old way, and so we didn't adapt.
Yeah.
And that was my fault. We was so far out in the country, I guess.
Yeah.
But we just never thought.
And you're
that-
plenty successful doing it the way
No,
you're doing
that's
it.
what I say. We was doing what we needed to do and winning races and doing what we was set out to do. But then all of a sudden, all that stuff really caught up with us.
Right.
Because everybody got to doing it, and it just gets more and more complicated. And I mean, you know, we got even at Richard Petty Motorsports, you know, you got 6 or 8 engineers running around. They don't do nothing except punch them buttons on that machine.
That's right.
And run them papers and look at them and pass them around, but they never actually touch the race car.
Right.
And to me, that was not the way things need to be done, because when I drove the race car, I worked on the race car too.
That's right.
And in fact, I worked on the race car before I started driving, but it was just an automatic deal. And during the winter, we'd make changes on the car from the year before, and the guys in the shop wouldn't do anything if I wasn't at the shop, because they were afraid that that wasn't the way I wanted it done.
Yeah.
And they said, look, you drive the car, you know what you want, so you build the first one.
Mm-hmm.
So
And then
if
we'll
it was
copy it.
a spindle or an A-frame or something special, I'd build the first one, get it like what I wanted to it, and hand it to them, and then they could build enough to run all year with.
Right.
And so I was the chief engineer too, I guess. Not from the engine standpoint. See, my brother took care of all the engine. That was what's really neat about Petty Enterprise. I was the driver and probably the chief engineer on the race car. Dale Emmon took care of all the mechanical part, made sure that what I wanted was on the car, or he'd come up with an idea and we'd talk it over and try to figure it out. And then my brother, he did the engine. He was up in another little shop up there, and we didn't really mingle that much. I mean, he was up there, he done his thing, Dale done his thing on the car, and then we had an engineering department, or a fab shop we call it.
Yeah.
That's where I worked out of. So we all worked together in a separate
And it all come together as
but
one
then it
piece.
all came to the middle of the table, and if each one of us done our job, then we done good. If somebody left something on the table, then we didn't do good.
Yeah.
And but that's where the engineers and stuff come in now. The cars are so engineered, and then NASCAR is taking that engineering further in their vineyard, because they got a bunch of engineers that try to figure out
How to
and
stop
stay-
the engineers.
and try to stay ahead of the engineers.
That's right.
That all the teams have, because all the teams look at the rules, look at a piece, and then they take that thing and they turn it all different ways, dissect it, try to make it better, lighter, or infringe on the rules a little bit,
Yeah.
whatever it may be. So it's just a different world as far as the racing part. I think Kyle summed it up the best when he said, the only thing that's the same about racing as it's always been, they throw the green flag when it starts and the checker flag when it's over. Everything
Yeah.
else
In
in
between.
between,
That's right.
after, before is
It's
different.
different.
But for us to stay on the cutting edge of society changes.
That's right.
Okay, every 5-10 years, you got a new crowd of people coming in, and they want something better than what their granddaddy had or what their daddy had.
Yeah.
You know, so each generation wants something a little bit different.
Yeah.
So NASCAR has tried to keep up with the trends. I mean, you know, for 100 years we run carburetors or something.
Yep.
I'm just using that.
Yep. Now we got fuel injection.
Now there's fuel injection out there, and they so they go fuel injection. It cost us millions of dollars.
Yeah.
All the owners, but don't make the cars run any different. Don't get any better gas mileage.
Right.
The guy in the grandstand, to me, he could care less. I mean, he don't care if you're pedaling the car,
Yeah.
as long as you're racing with
As
somebody.
long as you're running next to
Yeah,
somebody.
right.
Yeah.
And so when you look at it from that standpoint, you know, it is what it is, and we just accept it from there.
Right. And then, you know, even not only that, but now the sponsor stuff has changed as well. I mean, years ago you'd probably go to make an appearance for STP. Now we're doing an appearance for STP right here, answering fan questions over the internet on a Facebook chat. So, you know, just even stuff like that has changed.
Yeah, that's changed a whole lot, because a lot of the deals when we first started doing the deal in STP back in the early 70s, they didn't know how to use it.
Right.
I mean, and over a period of time, then they went to the deal where we had a lot of personal appearances at Walmart and, you know, all this kind of stuff. And then after that, they kind of got away from that, going to seminars, going
Mhm.
to car shows where there was a lot more people.
Right.
You know what I mean? So they used you and yourself to get in front of more people than they do when you got 400 or 500 people at an autograph session. So, you know, again, STP, when we first went with them, they were in Chicago. They moved their offices to Fort Lauderdale, I think. And then another company bought them out, and they went back to Chicago. They wound up in, another company bought them, they went to Connecticut, and then another company bought them, and they wound up in California. Now they're back to home office or back
Right.
to college, to wherever, Connecticut. And the deal being that we've got some of the same people that worked with us 10 or 15 years ago that's running the company now.
Yeah.
So they understand the brand, they understand the customers, and so they're trying to get back more in the middle of the road operation. People that just work on their own cars.
Yeah.
And they understand their customer.
Yeah.
And they're getting back to that now because that's what got them where they're at. So,
Well, I'm biased, but I'm certainly tickled to death that they're back in racing.
Well, we are too.
Yeah.
And, you know, I guess the sponsoring, I guess the race this weekend.
That's right.
Next weekend.
Next weekend.
And
Yep.
Next weekend, Chicago, is that
Yeah.
where it's at? And, you know, we got a car up there with the STP colors
Yeah.
and stuff on the 43. So they're getting more involved back, and that's where they came from, grassroots. Used to, you couldn't go to a racetrack anywhere, no matter if it was a go-kart track or what, had a big STP sticker, banners
Right.
all the way around the deal. And
They're getting back to that.
They're getting
You
back
see-
and doing that
you see
again,
that, yeah.
just to let people know that they've got a good product.
Right.
The deal is getting in front of people, and once somebody uses their product, they don't have to advertise anymore. They go back and buy some more.
That's right. That's you've taught me that. You said if you got a good product, I can get them to get it once. If you got a good product, they'll keep
Yeah.
buying it and buying it.
I can't sell it the second time.
So we got more questions. Three Forever asked, "What's your biggest NASCAR memory?"
You know, it'd have to be a win, right? It'd have to be.
Have to be a
It
win.
would probably have to be back. You know, we won our first race, big track race at Daytona in '64, and Plymouth had just come, or Chrysler had just come with the Hemi engine, and I'd won a bunch of races, but they're all on short track because the engine that the Plymouth had was not a horsepower engine.
Right.
It was okay for short tracks and stuff, but when you had to run 200 mile or 150 mile an hour, 160 mile, it just wasn't there. And to be able to take the Hemi and go out and win the first race that the Hemi was in, and the first super speedway race for us, was really a milestone in our career, because we then were able to come back and win, you know, 6 more Daytona 500s.
Right.
And 3 400s, I guess. And so Daytona was the first super speedway that we won on. My dad won the '59 race down
Right.
there, and then we come back in '64 and won. And so if you looked at my career, Daytona was a big part of my career as it went forward, because Daytona, you win Daytona, then it lasts all year long.
Yeah. That's right.
And so we were able to win Daytona and then go out and win other races and
Yeah.
championships. But that was sort of, I grew up with Daytona, I guess,
Yeah.
when you look at it from that standpoint.
Racing Around wants to know, what is the best advice you can give to a young driver with dreams of making it to the Cup level?
Go get a job. Go to work for a living.
Yeah.
I tell you, everybody I know that's made it to the Cup Series has got there a different way.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them started in go-karts, some of them motorcycles, some of them started Saturday night stuff, and the progression now basically is different than it was when we grew up. Me and Pearson, Baker, and House and them, we started out in cars.
Right.
You know what I mean? But now the kids start out 5 years old.
Oh, yeah.
In go-karts, and then they move to legend cars and
Right.
midgets or whatever, they move their stuff up. And when the very first race I ran, I was 21 years old and never been in a race car.
Yeah.
Okay, these guys that come up now at 21 years old, they got 15 years experience.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And if your first race is at 21 years old, you're not gonna make it.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you say that, but the big deal that I tell anybody, if they want whatever career it is, to make it different, but especially racing. If you say I want to be a race car driver, it's going to take you 4 or 5 years to mature enough to see if you got the talent or not.
Right.
In your mind, you might have it, but where's
Right.
your record? What are you doing? And in those 4 or 5 years, you got to dedicate yourself to nothing but that. You can't be hot rodding around. You can't have a bunch of girlfriends.
Yeah.
You got to say, this is what I want to do with my life. And you got to forget everything else.
That's right.
And it's hard to do.
Yeah.
There's very few people that make it, but again, the experience of starting out as young as you can,
Yeah.
with always get as good equipment as you can, and that's a hard deal because it takes money to do
That's
it.
right.
A lot of times, mom and dad don't have the money.
Yeah.
It's hard to convince the guy next door to give you,
$100
$100 for a set of tires, or
Yeah.
or a go-kart, or a motor, or a spark plug. So it's not an easy route.
Yeah.
And I guess like any other sport, but we don't have that training and don't have the numbers that football has or baseball.
Right.
So there's less chances to get there in racing than there probably is any other sport that's out there.
Yeah, I mean, I get asked that question a lot too, and I think you're a perfect example of it, that racing really is a family sport, probably more than any other sport. You know, the other sports, the parents will drop you off at baseball practice or whatever, and you go, and your coach tells you what to do. But to make it in racing, especially if you start at a young age, your family really has to be committed to it as much as you are.
Yeah, you do. I mean, you look at Jeff Gordon, you look at Jimmy Johnson.
Right.
I mean, you look at those guys, they were supported by their parents.
That's right.
From early go, and their parents were able to give them some good equipment,
That's
give
right.
them some good guidance, and they kind of molded them,
Yep.
okay, and pushed them. But if Jimmy or Jeff hadn't wanted to do it, you can't push them.
That's
you
right.
can't push anybody further than they want to go.
That's right.
So they led it. They just had somebody behind them.
Yeah. 32 racing junkie. Would you have ever believed that Petty Enterprises would have been as big as it has become when your dad first started?
You know, not really. When Dad first started, we had a reaper shed. Was exactly what I'm saying. We had a reaper that went in there. You know, could cut wheat and
Right.
oats and stuff at the end of the year. And it had a tin roof, no walls, and dirt floor. That's where we put the first race car. And then it got cold one winter, so Daddy put up some walls. And then the next summer, I think, had my brother and myself mixing cement in a wheelbarrow, and we poured cement. So if you look at the floor now, there's a big spot about this big, and then there's another spot, and another. Some of it's not too level either. One of us would be mixing cement, the other would be spreading.
Yeah.
Anyhow, and that's where it started. And then to go back and see, you know, we got 50 or 60,000 square feet, heated, air-conditioned buildings,
Yeah.
machinery, all that kind of
Level-
stuff up
level
there now.
floor.
Well, there's a lot of there's a lot of different steps because up until 1956 we stayed in that deal. 56 Daddy built a new building back behind it. 57 we built another building. 58 he built another, and they're on different levels.
Okay. So you just got
the floor is level.
Yeah.
You got to step out of one deal.
Yeah.
And then the last buildings were, I guess, done in the early 90s, and they're all on a level floor.
Right.
So, but it's no, you never thought about getting bigger or doing anything. You just did what you had to do to get in front of you. And you know, you go now and you see these humongous racing shops.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, all the glory and big fronts and stuff like that. They don't make the race car run no faster.
No, that's right.
So we always looked at, hey man, as long as you got walls and the place is air conditioned and heated,
Yep.
and you got all the equipment, don't worry about what it looks like.
That's right.
You know what I mean? But the shop inside is as clean as anybody's shop, no
Oh,
matter
yeah.
how. The outside might look like it's 1950, but it was.
It was.
But we didn't try to spend the money we got from sponsors or from driving the race car or whatever. It went into the race car. It
That's
didn't
right.
go into
To building.
to showing off.
That's right.
Okay, we tried to show off on the racetrack.
That's right. And you did a pretty good job of that. NASCAR 101 wants to know, what is your favorite track that you've raced at?
You know, if you call it a racetrack, I loved it. I mean, if you went out here in the parking lot and put up some cones and stuff and said that's a racetrack, that was fine with me.
That's right.
Probably the one that, just like I talked before, the one that really propelled me into the national spotlight more than any of them was Daytona.
Yeah.
And Daytona was a lot different run now than it is with the stricter plates and stuff. Cars didn't handle as good. They had little bitty tires, and it was a handling racetrack.
Yeah.
And you had to know how to draft people and all this kind of stuff. Now the cars, basically, whichever line you in, that's the way you go. And you sit there running wide open anyway. So it's a different form of racing. But again, I grew up with Daytona. Daytona grew up with me. And if I looked at the favorite track, it would have to be something that escalated me to another level.
It'd be Daytona.
And it'd be Daytona.
Petty 43 NASCAR's question is, what's the most fun you've ever had racing, and what were you racing? For example, on dirt, drag car, cup car.
Most fun I ever had. I had fun all the time. It didn't make any difference. It was more fun to win than it was to lose.
That's right.
You know, I don't know that. I don't know if I looked at it for fun. I looked at it for enjoyment.
Yeah.
You mean, and probably more than anything was satisfaction. And the deal that I know, I come home at night when the race was over and won the race, go to bed and can't sleep because I know I didn't do a good job.
Yeah.
And then I've run 8th or 10th or 5th or something and come home and sleep like a baby. Say, ain't nobody in the world could have done a better job. I mean, that was self-satisfaction.
Yeah.
So me driving a race car as a hobby, it was more self-satisfaction for me than it was for me to the fans.
And you had to have a bunch of satisfaction of all your week's work. You know, I think that's what a lot of people don't realize is a lot of people think that we show up to the racetrack and just run the race and go home and don't ever see the car again and stuff. But there's a lot that goes on in the race car shops during the week to prepare to get to the racetrack.
You got to figure in team, and this is a team sport. Even though the drivers, you're stuck out there. There's not a professional, or there's not a game played anywhere with as many players as it takes to run a racing team. So a racing team is more diversified, takes more talent from so many different angles to make that car run.
Yeah.
You got to have brake specialists, tire specialists, motor specialists, carburetor specialists, you know, paint specialists.
Yeah.
So all these guys are what makes the team. And like you say, when you do run good or win the race, all of them people are winners.
Yeah.
Not just the driver or the crew chief or the guys at the racetrack.
That's right.
So you've got everybody's heart with you when you go out there.
Right.
Because you're driving for them. And self-satisfaction is so great when even the people that sit out front and answer the phones, they're winners too.
That's right.
So everybody's a winner.
That's right. Steve, Petty Fan 43, what did you and President Reagan talk about during the fried chicken picnic after the number 200 win?
The first thing when we went upstairs to talk to him, he was in disbelief that Cale and myself could run 200 mile an hour and smoke flying off the cars where the tires were touching. And it just boggled his mind from that standpoint. I don't think we got into no politics.
No?
You know what I mean? Because he was there to enjoy himself and we was enjoying it. And when we went and eat fried chicken, and Bobby Allison was on one side and I was on the other side, and we just sat there and I don't even know what we talked about. I mean,
racing.
It was such a big deal to me.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, there you are eating lunch with the President of the United States. I mean, you know, he's really no different than us. I mean, he puts on his breeches and his shoes, and eats and does just like her. But his position in the world, you know, that you're sitting there with the most powerful man in the world. You know what I mean? And he's sitting there talking to you, just like, hey, buddy, how's it going?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Chicken's pretty good. Give me that biscuit over there. You know, that kind of stuff. So it was
neat.
It was just great. But I had talked to him before he ran for president. my wife Linda and myself went to Baltimore, Maryland, and met with him, us and him, in a hotel room, just talking, because I was fiddling with politics in North Carolina, and he figured if he could get me on his side, we'd get some of the racers on his side.
Yep.
But we went up there and we had a good conversation. Linda was on the school board at the time, so she was interested in, what are you going to do with the board of the education deal?
Right.
What is your ideas of, kindergarten or, Smart Start or whatever it is?
Right.
And I just asked him about general things, and we probably talked one-on-one for about an hour. And that was before he become president.
Right.
But even after that, then he remembered us.
Yeah.
Because in fact we talked about in that deal. I said, the first time I met you was in Baltimore. He said, yeah, I remember you and your wife coming up there.
Yeah.
I was pretty dang smart.
That's really neat. That's really neat. 32 Racing Junkie wants to know, what is your favorite family moment in racing?
In racing?
That's what he says.
Family, that's what he said. I don't know if there's a favorite, but I do know back in the early 70s and stuff, we had all the kids and stuff. And we'd go to Martinsville or we'd go to Daytona, go to Atlanta, and win the race. And all of them got to come and take pictures in the
Victory
Lane. Now you don't have families and stuff in there. Maybe the wife comes in and brings one of the kids.
Right.
But we never went anywhere where my kids didn't take one of their buddies with them.
Right.
Okay. And so you see these pictures in the winner's circle. No mechanics, no crew chiefs, just me standing there with about 8 or 10 kids. I said, no wonder he drives that hard. He's got to keep all them kids filled.
Yeah.
But those were the favorite deals, really, to have your family, your closest part of your family, in the winner's circle with you. Because I know when we won Daytona, first couple of times, my mother and daddy was in there too.
Yeah.
And that was just beyond thinking about how much that blew us up.
That's neat. Petty 43 NASCAR wants to know, what was your immediate reaction after your 200th win after the duel with Yarborough at the finish line in 1984?
What was my what now?
Your initial reaction.
We won.
Yeah.
No, it was, I don't know. I guess I was just so dang excited about the thing. Because beating him on the last green flag lap.
Right.
You got to figure, we came around and I beat him by this far. And it was caution flag. And we come back around, I go down the racetrack, he goes down pit road, thinking the race is over. And the crew chief hollers at him and said, get back on the racetrack, the race ain't over. So he pulls back on the racetrack in third place. Me and him race for the lead. I beat him this far, and he runs third in the race.
Yeah.
So that's a trivial deal.
Yeah. He was so mad just about losing by a foot.
He was mad because he really had the fastest car, and he knew it. But he waited too long to make his move.
Right.
Because he was going to wait till the last lap. Well, when they threw the caution with 2 laps to go, that messed his strategy up.
Yeah.
And he was all the way down to the end of the backstretch by the time he caught up with me. And because most of the time, back then anyway, the way they done it, as quick as you come off the second corner, you pulled out. And by the time you got to the third corner, you was in front of the guy. Right. Well, the way this happened, I led him all the way down 2/3 of the deal, and he was beside. Just as we started in the corner, he goes in front of me. Okay. Then he's not got the draft. I got the draft on him then because he goes in and goes up.
Yeah.
I just turn left and get beside of him. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Now if he'd have passed me going down the backstretch, he would have won the race.
Yeah.
It was that's how technical that stuff gets right there at the end.
Scott, 43 fan, wants to know, what does STP mean to you?
Well, it means special treated petroleum is what it but it was basically a lifesaver for Petty Enterprises and probably for racing as a whole, because up until 1971 we didn't have sponsors.
Right.
There was the factories were in it. We were in with Chrysler. There was people in with General Motors. Ford was in, and that was really the engineering and the monies that came into sport. There were no nationwide advertisements. You might have Max grocery store on the side of your car.
Right.
Guy give you $100 and a pack of beer or something.
Yeah.
And that was about it. But you didn't have any major. When the factories went away, that left a big hole in Cup racing. We were fortunate in '71 that RJR Winston brand got involved.
Right.
Okay. But still, yet we were sitting there with race cars with no money to make it work. Well, STP, we got during the winter deal. We got with them, and we signed a sponsorship for the race car, and got lucky. Went to Riverside and won the first race for the STP. The car was still blue, but
yeah.
And won the first race for them. Well, that just set everybody on fire. And then I think Pure later or somebody was the next guy to step forward. Then the first thing you know, we had banks, beer companies,
Right.
different people walking in and said, hey, this is a good deal. So really,
STP started it.
STP broke the ice, got the ball rolling.
Right.
And being we was winning most of the races or championships at that particular time, we wound up being the lead.
Right.
And with their help, we led that much more.
Yeah.
And so it was really a breakthrough. Somebody else would have come along later on, but they were the first ones to the door and really opened up the door to all the sponsorship that you see on the cars today. They was the initial start.
Yeah. And it's been over 40 years now. Believe it?
Yeah, that's a long time.
43 fan forever wants to know, is the formula for Petty Blue still a secret?
It's copyrighted.
Is it?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, you can buy it, I think.
Okay.
You know what I mean? But
so if somebody wants to paint their car at home Petty Blue, they can do it.
I think they can. Now,
Okay.
don't quote me on that. But I do know that it's been copyrighted, so nobody can have exactly the same color.
Right.
And all you do is put another drop of blue and it changes anyway. So,
Right.
But anyhow, we went ahead and had it copyrighted just because.
Just
now
'cause
we can
it's
call
good.
it Petty Blue. Nobody can argue with it.
Right. Petty HM has got a question for us. He wants to know, how many cowboy hats do you own?
Well, really, I keep about 10 or 12. And when I do, I get them from Charlie One Horse. They out of Texas. And I've been doing this for 20, 25 years. I don't know how long. And I'll wear them a while, and then I take them and autograph them. And then we take an auction off. We'll give them to Hard Fun or somebody that's raising money.
Right.
That we know that they can get some money out of the thing. And, you want to help the PTA, but them guys ain't got $50. So,
Right.
So you try to get them in a position where they make good money for somebody for the
Cause.
that
Right.
you're trying to do. And had two different deals. One in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and then this past winter we were in Iowa at the racetrack in Iowa, and NASCAR Foundation was out there for that. And I'd sent them a hat, and they was up there auctioning the thing off, and they went back and forth. A lady over here and a man over there, and they was back and forth. It got up to $20,500. And I said, well, one of these guys going to back out in a minute. I jumped up and said, time out. And they said, what do you want? I said, I got 2 hats. So we sold 2 hats.
Really?
Yes, sir.
Wow.
And we did that one time before, exactly the same price, in Winston, probably 8 or 10 years ago.
Wow.
But anyhow, what I do
Yeah.
with the hats, I autograph. I'll wear them a while. I'll autograph them, and they usually get auctioned off for charity.
Yeah, I've been to a few charity events where we've seen them go for a good amount of money. I've never seen them go for $20,000, but I've seen them way up there before.
Yeah, but they $5,000 or $6,000
Yeah,
is no big deal.
That's right.
Yeah.
And while we're at it, I know this is not one of the questions, but I have a question, or more something just to talk about. For everybody that's out there, I know a lot of people know about Victory Junction. It's summertime here, so all the kids are getting ready to come back. Me and Janice usually go up there and spend a day or a couple days in the summertime to go and hang out with the kids and be just kind of go up there and enjoy it. But Talk about Victory Junction Gang Camp for a minute.
I just left over there. There were some people from New York or somewhere up north. Anyway, they give us a paddle boat, and so I went over today and rode around the lake with 3 or 4 the kids.
Yeah.
And took some pictures so that they could send back to those people. But anyhow, Victory Junction is a camp for chronically and seriously ill kids that are not healthy enough to go to a regular YMCA camp or church camp or anything like that. And we usually do, like in the summer, we have 8 to 10 weeks with 125 kids. And
per week?
Per week.
Right.
And they're from 7 to 15, I think, something like that. And when it don't cost the parents anything, everything is a charitable deal.
Right.
And we do fundraisers all the time. People sign checks to make it all work. And we work on like $6.5 million budget. So that it takes a lot to entertain these kids and stuff. But the way it is we've got a hospital there. So when the kid comes in, he comes in and he's got his record. So we know if he's taking certain medicines and stuff like that. But then we never run them through the hospital. If at 10 o'clock they need a shot, then one of the nurses will go out and find them and give them a shot. So they try to keep them away because they grew up around hospitals.
That's right.
All they ever see is hospitals. They've been told, well, you can't go horseback riding, you can't go swimming, you can't do this. Out there we do everything. You get to do everything that your brother and sister or you see on TV, and it costs nobody anything. And we got kids from every state in the union that's been through our deal, and we have volunteers that come in and counselor, and every kid's got a counselor.
Right.
In other words, if there's 125 kids there, there's 125 counselors.
Yeah.
So no kid is ever left by himself.
Yeah.
There's somebody with them all the time. And again, it's a charitable deal, and we look after like I think 20 or 21 different afflictions, whether you got blood trouble or heart trouble or cancer or whatever it may be, burn people, and it's just fascinating to go and watch these kids and how they react, because most of the time they've been segregated and they think they're the only person in the world that feels like that or is that way. They're in wheelchairs or whatever. All of a sudden they go in there to another 120 people just like them.
That's right.
So they join the world.
Yeah.
And they do all these things that they've been told they can't do. And when they go home, they've done that, they want to do other things. Yeah. So they really join society.
Yeah.
I think it's a great place.
It really
Everybody
is a great
that
place.
gets a chance needs to come by and just sort of see what they've done here.
Absolutely.
And, it's just right outside of Randleman, North Carolina.
Yeah. Casey Mears fan has got a question for us. He wants to know what's the secret to a final lap comeback like you've had plenty of times.
Be in the right place at the right time. You know, every situation I've ever been in has been different in some way, shape, or form. And so there's no code to it. That's where experience comes in. The more experience you've had, the more chances you've had to fail, so the better chance you've had to learn also.
Yeah, that's right.
So each move you make is countered by somebody else. So have you outguessed this guy? I mean, just like when we go back to Cale and myself on the 200th win, I outmaneuvered him because he had one way of doing things, and mine happened to counter his.
That day.
But if he'd have done something a little bit different, what would I have done to counter?
Right.
And I just did what I seen was in front of me, and it was an instantaneous deal. It wasn't going up backstretch. Well, I know when he does this is what I'm going to do.
It was instinct.
You're blank.
Right.
Okay. And the quicker you react, the better chance you have, and the more experience you got, the quicker you can react.
Yeah.
So it was just being, again, in the right place at the right time, and not that anybody else made a mistake. You just made the right move.
That's right.
And it's sort of like at the end of any race, do you stop and get 2 tires, or do you get 4 tires? Do you try to stretch the gas? This is just a gamble.
Yeah. 32 Racing Junkies says, what would you talk a little would you talk a little bit more about your drag racing career?
Yeah, we got in 1965. 64, Chrysler came with the Hemis, and so 65 season came about, and Ford had been hollering so much about the Hemi that NASCAR said, okay, we're going to ban the Hemi. Can't run the Hemi. Well, at that time we was working for Plymouth, and Plymouth said, we're not going to run, we're not going to put our other engine back in the car. Our stock engine we're not going to put in there. So what about going drag racing? I said, okay, we'll do that. So we go off and take a Barracuda and put a big Hemi in the thing and go drag racing. And in doing that, then that left nothing but Fords at the racetrack in
Right.
65. And so we drag raced up until July. And then NASCAR said, okay, we're going to kind of bend the rules. We're going to let you come back, but you can't run on a track bigger than a mile. And that's where the Hemi really demonstrated their deal, was when you got on a big track where the thing would run fast. Short track, you didn't need all that power anyway.
Right.
So I think we ran 14 races the rest of the year. And the only basic super speedway, they just opened up Rockingham, and it was a mile. And we did get to run there. Other than that, it was just half-mile tracks and stuff that we got to run. And so we finally, I think we ran 3 or 4, after we started running, Bristol was the first race in July. And I think we ran 3 or 4 drag races after that, and then just
Back to NASCAR.
parked the drag car and went back to stock car racing altogether.
Okay. Steve Pettyfan 43 says, how do you come up with an elaborate signature like you got?
It's not elaborate to me. Okay, when I got out of high school in 1955, then my dad wasn't big on me going to college. I wasn't big on going to college, 4-year college.
Yeah.
But in his upbringing, he went to a business school, King's Business School in Greensboro, and it was all about how to keep books and numbers. And he said, look, in racing, you're going to need to be able to do business, figure mileage, how far is it, how long is it going to take you to get to the racetrack, and then you're going to have to keep up with the monies you spend or whatever. So you got to go take a business course. So I went that winter and went for 3 months during the winter because we wasn't racing. And I was just working on my car's dad's car at that time. So I went 3 months, and then I quit school, went back to racing, and then the next year went back and finished it up. So it took me a year to do a 6-month business course. But during the business course, the first thing they do is you got to keep a set of books. So that means you got to write down everything in the journal, and most people you couldn't read it, so they've got a little course there to teach you how to write, where it's legible enough that the next guy could read it. Okay, I passed that course with no trouble. And then they had another course with an extracurricular deal, Oriental penmanship, Oriental penmanship. And my dad had always written his name with a little flare and stuff. So man, I like that. So I go through the course, I passed that course, but it teaches you all these circles and deals and all this stuff. And then I sit down with it and I say, okay, and you're supposed to slant all your stuff to the right. So I tried to do that, but I couldn't do it fast. So I said, okay, change my deal. I do it the other way. So I do it backwards, and I can do it quicker.
Yeah.
So that was trial and error, I guess.
Yeah.
And when I first started, it probably a little bit more fancier then than it is now. But and it's changed over the years. But if you look at one of them 30, 40 years ago, you can still see it's the same guy wrote
Yeah.
it.
Big Country 641 wants to know, how close are the number 43 and the number 9 to victory lane right now?
How close are they? They're close enough that we should have been there.
Yeah.
Okay. And, it's a situation where when all the leaves are lined up in the right direction, you're going to win a race. If you're not, it don't make no difference how good you are. And we get a little bit better every week.
Yeah.
I think we do. We're getting a little bit closer. All we've got to do now is, I mean, I look back and see a lot of people that's won races that wasn't even in the race, and something happens to everybody else, or they get better gas mileage, or somebody else blows a tire.
Right.
It's circumstances beyond anybody's control. So the fastest car don't always win the race. It's always better to have the fastest car because it's easier to win a race. But circumstances beyond our control has just not been there yet. And we've got to get a little bit better.
Yeah.
And we feel like we're getting a little bit better every week. We had a real good string there, 4 or 5 races where you finished good, and then 4 or 5 races where we've not finished good, but we've run just as good or better than what we did in those races.
That's right.
So circumstances has just not been there.
Yeah.
And so when all that stuff lines up and we get a little bit better, I told everybody, we're not off anywhere this far. We're off a bunch of places this far.
Yeah.
So if we can get all those places, then there's your tenth of a second, and that's when you're going to start winning.
Yeah. Casey Mears fans got another question for us. Says, what's the secret to drafting to a win?
Again, it's back to being in the right place at the right time.
Right.
And the cars, I don't know how I would react with the way the cars respond today. Just like I was talking to Aric here, and he said his car could get that close to the car in front of him, but he couldn't draft push him. The car just would not go there.
Yeah.
Well, with the cars that we had, we could always run into the back of the car in front of us. So it was easy then to push the car or do draft it.
Right.
So the draft is so much different, especially with the restrictor plates, where you've just got 500 horsepower or whatever it is, and then no matter how much air you put in the engine's not going to run any faster. Where when we had open carburetors, then you got this much air in there, but if you could get more air in there, the car would run faster.
Yeah.
So that's where the draft come in. When you got in the draft, there was more air going to the carburetor, the car would run faster. You don't have that now.
Right.
So it's more of a aero situation. Are you in the right place? Is the right car behind you? Is somebody dragging you down, or is he pushing you? And a lot of times you'll see cars run around with 2 of them like this. They'll run 2 or 3 laps, and then they'll change positions and run 2 or 3 laps. One of the cars is going to be quicker. Either one's pushing one, and a lot of times it's really the fastest car is behind because he can help push. If the fastest car is in front, he'll get away from the slower car. So a lot of times when you see 2 cars running, the fastest car is the second car.
Yeah.
Because he can push. So, if you are the fastest car and you come down to the end of the deal and it's just you and somebody else, if you got the faster car, you can pull out. But if you're in that slower car, you can't pull out.
Yeah.
So, all the above.
David 43 says, what is the development plan for Corey LaJoy and Ryan Truex at Richard Petty Motorsports?
Well, right now, really, is we're trying to get some sponsorship. That's the main deal. What we'd like to do is run each one of them in some nationwide races. Not right now, no, where we just go in and say, okay, we got a team, we're going to run all the races.
Right.
Sort of spot check these guys in there. Also maybe run some ARCA races.
Yep.
And get them some experience in these bigger cars and with better drivers and better teams that they race against.
Right.
And it all depends on not their ability, it's more on our ability to be able to draw in sponsors that will help us then sponsor their cars and get their cars and go.
Right.
And if you had your druthers, you go ahead and run both of them every other race this year, get them ready. Maybe next year you put one of them into a nationwide race for the whole race.
Yeah.
For a whole year. And then with the other one, you'd still run spot checks, see a different deal, and then maybe run him in some cup races from time to time.
Right.
So right now it's really open, and until we get sponsorship to be able to go to the next level, then this is as far as we can go with.
Right. Scott 43 fan says, Richard, could you talk about the race you thought you won, but your dad protested and was declared the winner?
Yeah,
I've heard this one too.
That was 1959. They had a racetrack in Atlanta It's a mile and a half, or a mile, whatever, maybe a mile. I guess it's a mile, at the fairground at Lakewood Speedway. And we run a 150-mile race there. And it was always, God, it was rough, dirty, dust, and it got really, really dusty. And in fact, it got so dusty that the flagman was started on the outside of the racetrack, and they had the scoring on the inside of the racetrack. Well, the flagman didn't know where, they didn't have radios then,
right,
or any communication, so he couldn't see what was going on. I think they had a blackboard tell him how many laps. Well, he couldn't see what, so he gets down and goes to the infield so that they can tell him how many laps he run and all that. And so they tell him when the thing's going, they say, okay, give the 43 the checker flag, he wins the race. So, you know, we don't know. We just go run 150 miles.
Yep.
And you didn't have regular pit stops or nothing was regular. You just went and run. When it was over with, you stopped. And so we stopped on the racetrack, and they come out and said, you won the race. Well, about 2 minutes after that, somebody hollered, you didn't win the race. Somebody's protesting. Well, that kind of upset us, you know. And so we go over and check around. Sure enough, they left, with all the dust and stuff, they left my dad out of lap. In other words, they, you know, say it took 40 seconds to get around, and he run 40 seconds and 40 seconds, and then he had 80 seconds, then he had another 40. So they said, oh, you know, he didn't make a pit stop or nothing.
Right.
So they put him in. And so we wound up, second was the best I'd ever run anyway. And I was running a convertible, and he was running a hardtop. But I was running a 57 model car, and he had a 59 model car. And at that time, NASCAR was paying an extra $500 if you had the winning car was the model that year. In other words, the 59 model was worth $500 more winning than what 57 was. So I didn't win the race, but we went home with $500 more. And so I guess it wound up okay. But,
yeah.
And so it wasn't a big disappointment because we ran second, and that's the best we'd ever run. So
right.
We was tickled to death.
That goes to show you how competitive racers are too. Not only your dad, but all racers. But your dang dad would protest his son.
Yeah, but he was looking for the $500.
Yeah.
He didn't care.
It was business.
If he just said, okay, you win the race, but give me the $500, he'd been happy.
Yeah. Lastly, we want to thank you guys for everything, and we want to know from you, what has been the absolute best thing about being a NASCAR driver?
You know, I guess the lifestyle that it's let me and my family produce, to be able to go all over the country like we see it and do things that I probably didn't have talent enough somewhere else.
Right.
And to be able to do it, and you know, I didn't do this by myself. All that talent, we must have had 10,000 people put me in this position.
Yeah.
And but just being able to accomplish what you accomplished with all those people, you know, it's been God sent.
Yeah.
It just gave me the opportunity to meet people, to go places, and hopefully to help some people from along the way. So after that, I'm pretty happy with the way it is.
I hear you. So we want to thank you guys for joining us today. This was a lot of fun for us, and we want to thank STP and all the left lane club members for your participation.
Left wing?
Left lane.
Oh, okay, that's better.
Left lane. Did I say left wing?
No.
I was still stuck on the...
Let's don't get political here.
Yeah. But no, we really appreciate you guys joining us today. This was a lot of fun for us to be here at Richard's Museum and to hang out and talk to you guys. And we're going to announce the sweepstakes winner for the signed fire suit. And Richard, tell them who won.
Greg H. from Colorado.
Greg H. So congratulations,
Yes,
Greg
sir,
H. You won your fire suit that's signed by RP.
Yeah,
so.
you can wear it for Halloween, okay?
Or you can wear it at your local go-kart track. They'll let you wear it. So we appreciate you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We enjoyed it.